Hello, I'm Mike Alsheimer from the Financial Aid Office at SUNY Polytechnic Institute. And during this presentation, I wanted to go over some of the very first steps in applying for and receiving financial aid. What I wanted to talk about today would be the application process, how you go about applying for financial aid, the different types of financial aid that you might receive, and then I'll leave you with some good links for resources to help you through your search and your application process. The very first step to applying for most financial aid funds would be completing the federal form, which is called a FAFSA, the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. You would also need an FSA ID in order to sign the FAFSA electronically. Once you've completed the FAFSA, New York State residents can continue on to the Tuition Assistance Program, or TAP application. The FAFSA and the TAP application become available October 1st. It is important to note that for any New York State residents interested in the Excelsior Scholarship, that is a separate application that will become available later on in the year. For the FAFSA, the website that you're going to go to would be www.fafsa.ed.gov. The FAFSA becomes available on October 1st of each year. For those of you who are looking to start in the fall of 2020, you would complete the 2020-2021 FAFSA application. Some tips and some notes while completing the FAFSA application. First, the FAFSA is going to look at tax information, but they're going to look at what they call prior years information. Meaning if you're completing the 2020-2021 FAFSA, they're going to want your 2018 tax information. You would complete the FAFSA using this information, and if there has been a drastic change in income or financial situations since 2018, you can contact the office later to see about appealing that decision. But it's important that on your original FAFSA submission, you do use the 2018 information. Another helpful tip while completing the FAFSA would be to use what they call the IRS data retrieval tool. While completing the FAFSA's financial information, you're going to see a link that says click here to link to the IRS. If you click that link, it will take you to the IRS website. You can type in your information as it appears on your taxes, and you can transfer that information over to your FAFSA. You will still need to complete any information about untaxed income and assets, but it will automatically fill out all of your tax information for you. Once you've completed the FAFSA, the very last page you're going to see is called a submission confirmation page. On that page, you'll also see a link that says, click here to complete your state application now. Clicking that link will take you to the HESC website. That stands for the Higher Education Services Corporation. This organization handles all of the New York State funds. It'll ask you if you want to create a TAP application, and you will just need to create another ID, and it'll automatically fill out most of the information using the FAFSA information. There are one or two questions that New York State will ask you that aren't on the FAFSA, but in general, it's a very quick and easy application. A final note, if you go to the HESC website, which I will give you later on in the presentation, you can also put in your email so that they will notify you when the Excelsior application is available. Typically, this becomes available somewhere around the spring. Now that we've talked about the application process, I want to talk a little bit about what is looked at when they're determining your financial aid. And I'm going to repeat two main terms throughout this presentation. The first is cost of attendance. The second is expected family contribution, or EFC. The cost of attendance may sound like it's the amount of money that you're going to have to pay the school, but think of it more like a financial aid budget. The government allows us to give you financial aid for your tuition, your fees, your room and board, but it also allows us to help you with books and supplies, travel expenses, and miscellaneous personal expenses. When we add all of those things up, this becomes your cost of attendance for the year. What that means is that your cost of attendance includes direct costs, things that will actually show up on your billing statement from the school, as well as indirect costs, which are costs you will not be charged for, but that you can receive financial aid for. So just a note, when you're looking at your cost of attendance, it's going to be a higher figure than what your bill is actually going to be. The expected family contribution sounds like this is the money that you're going to need to pay out of pocket, but that is not the case. The EFC is calculated when you complete the FAFSA, and it is good for two purposes. It lets us know if you will qualify for a Pell Grant, and it helps us calculate your financial need. The way that we calculate your need is we take that cost of attendance that I just mentioned, we subtract your EFC, and the difference in between is your room for need-based aid. So just to give you an example, somebody may have an EFC of $50,000. That sounds very scary, but they're not going to have to pay $50,000 out of pocket. For starters, it doesn't even cost $50,000 to go to school here, and somebody could still take out enough loans to cover their full bill if they needed to. All that high EFC means to us is that you won't get a Pell Grant and you don't have any room for need-based funds. So now that we've calculated your need, let's talk about the different types of financial aid that you may receive. Grants. Grants are free money that do not need to be paid back. When we talk about grants, we're typically talking about funds from either the federal government or the state government. One of the grants that you may qualify for would be a federal Pell Grant. This comes from completing your FAFSA application. This is the grant that when we see your EFC, it will tell us how much, if any, you will qualify for from Pell. It's important to note that most schools will send your award letter based on a yearly total, and what we would do is we would split that in half. You would get half for the fall semester, half for the spring semester. It's also important to note that your Pell Grant will go up and down based on the number of credit hours that you are taking. Once you're a full-time student, because your charges don't go up, your Pell will not go up. But if you're going to be a part-time student, you could see a decrease in your Pell Grant because your tuition will be lower. The Federal Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant, or SEOG. This is another federal grant that comes from completing the FAFSA application. There is no additional application necessary. SEOG falls under two categories. First, it's need-based, meaning you need to have room between the cost of attendance and your EFC. Second, it falls under a category called limited funding. So if you qualify for a Pell Grant, you're going to receive that no matter what. With SEOG, the school has limited funds to hand out to students. Some schools will do this on a first come, first served basis. Some schools will do this on a need basis. So although I can't tell you how the school is going to hand out SEOG funds, it's a good reason to complete your FAFSA as soon as possible. New York State TAP, the Tuition Assistance Program. This is a state fund, and it comes from doing that second application after you've done the FAFSA. In order to qualify for TAP, you have to have been a New York State resident for at least a year before school starts. You have to be attending a school that's located in New York State, and you have to be a full-time student. TAP can pay up to the tuition cost at the school. The final grant that I'll talk about is the New York State Excelsior Grant. Just like TAP, you do need to be a New York State resident for at least a year before school starts. You have to be attending a SUNY school, and you have to complete 30 credit hours a year in order to keep qualifying for the Excelsior Grant. Again, it's important to note that the Excelsior Scholarship is a separate application from TAP. Scholarships. Just like grants, scholarships do not need to be repaid. We typically refer to scholarships when they are coming from the school itself or from outside sources. Here at SUNY Poly, all of our scholarships are merit-based. That means that we do not look at need or finances in order to determine if you qualify for a scholarship. They're all based on grades. Another important scholarship to keep in mind if you're going to be in a science, technology, engineering, or mathematics program is the New York State STEM Scholarship. Again, this is a separate application from both TAP and Excelsior. However, the STEM Scholarship may end up paying up to the full tuition cost. Most people do not consider loans to be financial aid because they need to be repaid. However, the way the government sees it is that they are giving you a loan without doing a credit check, with a low interest rate, and they're not requiring you to pay it back until after you graduate. So this means that it is help paying for school. Therefore, in order to qualify for any of the federal loans, you do have to complete the FAFSA every year. You would need to provide any documentation that the school requests of you, and you do have to keep your grades up in order to keep your loans the same way that you do to keep your Pell Grant. In order to qualify for the loans, you do also have to be enrolled at least half-time. Student loans may come in one of two forms. There are subsidized student loans and there are unsubsidized student loans. The interest rate is the same on both. There's no credit check on either, and you do have 6 months after you stop attending before you start paying them back. The difference between the two is that with a subsidized loan, you are not responsible for the interest until after you graduate. With an unsubsidized loan, you are responsible for the interest while you're in school. If you choose to take out an unsubsidized loan, you have the option of either paying the interest as you go or deferring the interest until after you stop attending as well. Just note that if you choose the second option and you defer the interest, when it comes time for you to pay back your loans, they will add all of the interest up, add it onto the principal balance, and you will end up paying interest on interest. A federal direct parent plus loan. This is different than the student loans because this is a loan that is in the parent's name. Unlike the student loans, there is a credit check involved with the plus loans. And unlike the student loans, the only limit to requesting a Parent Plus loan is you cannot receive more funds than the total cost of attendance. Parent Plus loans can be deferred until after the student stops attending, just like a student loan. However, they will work like an unsubsidized loan where the parent would be responsible for the interest during enrollment. The last fund that I'm going to talk about is the Federal Work-Study Program. Again, this falls under those two categories of being need-based, so you need to have room between your cost of attendance and your EFC, and it's a limited fund, so the school has limited amounts of money to offer in work-study. Work-study is very different than grants, scholarships, and loans. The other funds that I've already talked about will show up on your billing statement and help you pay for your direct costs, such as tuition, fees, and room and board if you're a dorm student. Work-study will not go towards your bill. If you are offered work-study, this basically means that you can get a job on campus and earn up to the offered amount through weekly or bi-weekly paychecks. I wanted to leave you with some good links and some resources to use while you're applying for aid and during your scholarship search. As mentioned, the FAFSA or federal application can be done at www.fafsa.ed.gov. Because you will be signing the application electronically, you will need an FSA ID, and because most students will need a parent's signature on the FAFSA, a parent will also need an FSA ID. That can be obtained at fsaid.ed.gov. HESC, the Higher Education Services Corporation, is again the organization that handles all the New York State funds. Their website is hesc.ny.gov. This is where you would complete the TAP application, the STEM application, and the Excelsior application. You can also plug in your email on this website and they will notify you when the Excelsior application is available to complete. Studentaid.ed.gov is a federal site that will go into more detail about some of the things that I just talked about today. Some good search engines for external scholarships would be collegeboard.com and fastweb.com. And you can always check with high school guidance offices or contact college financial aid offices for any questions or concerns that you may have. That was basically what I wanted to talk to you guys about, and I hope that this made it a little bit easier for you to get through the application process and to understand your award letters a little bit better. Thank you and have a good day.